If you're just using 4M to plan a project, or you're just using it to do construction on a project, or you're just using it with maintenance or asset management, you're not getting that full ROI, right? You really should be taking a step back and saying, hey, I've got access to this tool, to this great data. How would it change the way I approach the life cycle? I can use it in planning, I can use it in construction, I can use it in design, and those are your multipliers on your ROI. We should be planning to get more of that value out of the tool.
Welcome to 4M and 10M, where industry experts share real stories on how they're using AI to plan, design, and build better together in 10 minutes or less. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of 4M and 10M. I'm Chris Garafola, your host, and today's episode is brought to you by 4M, the trusted utility data platform delivering accessible, reliable, and actionable utility data across teams, workflows, and technologies. And today joining us, I have my friend Ed Shappell, the Vice President of Strategy and Technology at WSB. Ed, thanks so much for hopping on the show with me today, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
Likewise. So as we do at the beginning of every episode, Ed, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself, your role, and the company you work for with the audience?
Yeah, so I work for WSB Engineering, which is headquartered in Minnesota. We cover 10 plus states today, focus on transportation infrastructure, energy infrastructure, both renewable and traditional energy. We do a lot in planning, community planning, disaster recovery, a lot of survey services. And one of the unique services we offer is services to the civil contractor on infrastructure projects. It's fairly unique to design engineering firm. We've hired a lot of heavy civil expertise from the construction side of the industry. And that's really a differentiator for us. It's just helping us connect the engineering side with the construction side of delivering projects and also maintaining those projects and the assets on those projects.
Ed, can you take me back to the day when WSB decided to even work with 4M and use 4M's data? I know WSB's been very intentional about digital delivery and using technology as a force multiplier. So what problem were you trying to solve when you decided to bring 4M into that strategy?
Sure. I mean, it does tie back to our technology strategy as a company. And I do think there were probably two key factors that drove us to embrace 4M as a tool that we can leverage for our work and supporting our clients. I think the first one was that utilities and utility moves on any project, especially in transportation, but this is true in energy and other areas, they're challenging today. I spent, a decade with civil contractors dealing with utility moves. They would tell you how challenging those can be working with the owner and the utility companies. A lot of it is just due to lack of data. It's hard to plan and then actually execute any kind of utility move without good information. Because we were expanding our civil contractor business and doing more services to support our civil contractors, we needed a way to better serve them, especially when it came to utility moves, right? And I've seen the benefits with multiple DOTs, multiple municipal projects where having good data on the utilities ahead of time before you do your utility moves, it really does make a big difference. It can cut a lot of time and cost off your project schedule. We did a project with MnDOT where we had really good data on the utility moves as an example, one of their first alternative delivery projects, a CMGC, and that saved months of time on a utility move. And they have very short construction seasons, so that was one of the reasons we knew we needed to look at a tool like 4M. I also think safety was a big factor. I'm spending a lot of time with my civil contractors. We want to improve safety, reduce risk. So that's a big key. And on the flip side for the owners, right, it's really a key asset. If you look at any utility asset, it's a big part of maintenance and asset management in terms of budget and cost for any owner. It could be a DOT, it could be a municipality, it could be an energy company. So helping them not just deliver better projects when it comes to utilities and utility data, but also how do I maintain and manage those assets on the long term? Those were really the big factors on why we started to engage more in 4M.
You kind of touched on a lot of the value there, but from a leadership perspective, what does real value look like when deciding whether a platform becomes part of your standard workflow?
One is, does it actually improve workflow or data flow on a large portion of our projects? So we're trying to go for biggest bang for the buck when we look at technology tools. And we deal a lot with utilities. So it made sense to look at that area. It's got to, have measurable improvements. So some of the things that we measure are, can we get through a utility research? Can we build a early conceptual design using good utility data faster and get it in the hands of the owner, in the hands of the contractors sooner? That's a big win. We have seen and demonstrated that we can do that on multiple projects so far. So part of that is, how do we improve our own business, right? We're able to deliver faster with better, right, deliverables to the client. It's always good for us as a firm. But it's also about, how do we make it easier on our users? Because spending a lot of time on utility research, if anybody, you've done it before, it's time consuming and it can be frustrating. There's not a lot of good data sometimes, depending on the project area. So it's really helped from a reducing time, reducing costs, improving research earlier in any kind of project delivery scenario. And one of the things we do at WSB is we do look at measuring the improvement of any tool that we're going to invest in. And it's got to have cost and time impact. It's really going to make sense as an investment.
What's the biggest impact 4M is making today for WSB? Is there like one thing that you would hang your coat on?
Where I see the most value today is alternative delivery projects. And part of that is just because with the alternative delivery, you can get in sooner, you get better collaboration between owner, designer, contractors earlier in the process, earlier pre-construction, which is important in my opinion. And that just reduces risks. You're able to accelerate having good data ready as you're progressing through your design. It helps you with alternative options. We're always solving challenges both in the field and in the office. And that's probably had the biggest impact. If I had to pick one area, right, where 4M is really making a big impact, it is alternative delivery projects. And we talk to a lot of owners about this. If you're doing alternative delivery, it's great to have this data pre-construction. It makes a big difference, right? How you're going to plan, how you're going to execute the project.
Your decisions are only as good as the information behind them. So if you can have better data earlier on, the better decisions you can make. But talking about better data, Ed, do you think better data alone can lead to better infrastructure, or is it really the ability to make that data actionable across teams, workflows, and technologies?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any investment, right? Like when I think about how we invest as a firm in technology, it is about ROI, right? And so one of the things you have to consider is, if I'm just using a technology tool like 4M for one workflow or one data flow, right? As an example, my ROI is, let's say, X, and I need a multiplier, right, on that ROI. And honestly, I would say our clients are looking for the same thing when they invest in technology, whether it's a DOT, municipality, energy company. So what we're really looking for is that multiplier on the ROI. And that's where I would say that if you're just using 4M to plan a project, or you're just using it to do construction on a project, or you're just using it with maintenance or asset management, you're not getting that full ROI, right? You really should be taking a step back and saying, hey, I've got access to this tool, to this great data. How would it change the way I approach the lifecycle approach to my assets? I can use it in planning. I can use it in construction. I can use it in design. I can use it in all of these areas. And those are your multipliers on your ROI. And that's really what we look for as a firm, right? As well, is if we're not getting our maximum value, that's on us. We should be planning to get more of that value out of the tool.
I love that, trying to squeeze as much juice out of it as possible. I mean, that data can be valuable in various phases, as you mentioned, not just in one phase of the construction lifecycle. Over the next, say, 2, 3, 4 years, where do you see 4M making the biggest impact in your projects in digital delivery?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to help us with alternative delivery, like I said, right? But I think as we progress, BIM at the DOT level is going to expand. I suspect that we'll start to see more BIM design in the municipal space, more BIM design in the energy space. It's just a natural progression. And we've seen a lot of value already in leveraging 4M data, leveraging it right in a BIM environment, taking right the 4M data, modeling it in 3D. Your risk reduction is much better when you're doing that, when you're leveraging clash detection, right? One of the big value points of BIM. And I think that's something a lot of folks are searching for right now. I think one of the challenges, if you talk to a lot of DOTs around BIM, is they need tangible benefits, right? They're looking for, how is BIM going to really, right, help me with costs, help me with schedule? And I think we have some great examples. For instance, in Texas is a good example where we have concrete examples of good savings, right, and metrics on using 4M data as part of that BIM process in early risk reduction. And I think that's going to shift, right? I think as people learn, as people see those savings, right? And that's on all of us in the industry. We've got to do a better job of measuring those savings, right, from the use of technology and data, and then promoting that, right, so that owners are aware of it. They understand, right, the value of it. And it just takes time. I do anticipate in 2 to 3 years, right, we'll see more of that.
Ed, well, you've just entered my favorite part of the 4M and 10M. You've entered the lightning round. What's a question more infrastructure leaders should be asking right now?
It's really, that goes back to that ROI question. Am I getting the biggest ROI out of my investment in technology and data? Every infrastructure owner has a ton of technology and a ton of data. And I think they really do need to ask themselves, if I'm just using this technology or this data in one area, like planning or design, am I missing it when I'm going to maintenance or when I'm going to asset management? It's a great question every leader should be asking.
So Ed, if you had to explain your job to a 10-year-old, what would you say?
I think if I had to explain it to a 10-year-old, and I often do to my nieces and nephews as an example, really what I do is I use technology and data to help build the world around them. And really our goal is to make the community a better place for them to live in. And that includes safer roads, that includes safer bridges, it includes lower costs so that, for instance, all of those parents have more money to spend on education for my nieces and nephews. So it's really trying to relate it to what's important to them and what's important to that community. And they tend to get it. I think that they're a little more tech savvy, than we give them credit for.
So I know we're talking a lot about AI, innovation, and technology, Ed, but what's something experience teaches that technology never will?
I think that you have to look at the transportation industry as a whole. And there's typically two kind of groups of users on technology. It's an office user or a field user. And I think that one thing that I would tell you that experience teaches is you really should experience both. If you're a field user, for instance, and you're using 4M, but you've never taken the 4M data out to the field, for instance, to help with locates or help with a project, it's important to do it and understand how your field teams or field users are using it. And vice versa, right? A lot of times field users don't understand the work that's happening in the office. And I think that's something that experience does teach you. And one great example is that I talked about BIM. A lot of DOT designers that I know are taking some of their designers that are having to create 3D models now for design, and they're actually bringing them out with that 3D design into the field. And that shows you a lot of things you're not going to see if you're just sitting in an office, right? Being in the field, right, will teach you a lot. And if you're always spending all your time in the office, it's hard to learn those lessons.
That's a wrap. That's another episode of 4M and 10M. I just want to thank again my friend Ed for joining us today and sharing how WSB is using AI to build smarter, faster, safer infrastructure. Ed, thanks again for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.